And we're live. Welcome to Earful of Dirt, the Major League Rugby podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm Aaron Castro, coming to you from Arizona and still broken. So we'll get into recovery tips from broken bones today. I'm joined by Josh, who happens to be, at a hotel in SF doing some job training. Nick Henry, guest host tonight. Nick, you are our social media stats intern. That is what I refer to you as. But, before we get into it, tell us about yourself.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. So I'm a big numbers dork. I really enjoy following the growth of this league that we've been following for the last year and a half or so. A little bit on my background, I started playing rugby my senior year in high school after a friend of mine, Matt Copeland, started running around the football locker room as we were getting close to the end of our senior season, and said, why not come out to rugby and hit some people? Don't stop running around once football is over. So that's what I did. Joined that and had a couple of really good teachers that year. Teachers being part of our club. Our captain and vice captain were both high school All-Americans, the U19s at the time. And from there, played a little bit in college, played at Texas A&M for a year or two, and then played at University of Houston for a short bit. I've coached, assistant coached high school teams and JV high school teams. I did a short stint helping out with a collegiate women's team and, continued playing off and on for the last 12 years or so.
Outstanding. If anyone has questions or wants to interact with the show, hit up Corey, our producer. He's in the comments, in the control room, and on Twitter. So we'll get to those throughout the show. Everyone else, how's your week been?
It's been freaking hot as hell up here. I don't know about anybody else. It's been in the 90s, about like 80% humidity and gnats everywhere. So like walking outside is a little bit of hell in Iowa right now. Other than that, things are great. Josh, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. I can't complain about the weather. It's 75, nice and breezy here. I got sunburned yesterday, so maybe a little complaint.
I hope you brought a sweatshirt because it gets cold in San Francisco.
I did.
So for those new to the podcast, each Monday night we discuss news and rumors from Major League Rugby, the United States Professional Rugby Union competition. It's a chance to discuss the issues, hear from the league and team leadership, and check in on our friends across the U.S. rugby scene. Josh, what are we doing tonight?
We're talking Austin, Utah, Seattle, Houston, Glendale crushing NOLA. Looking back at our predictions from last week, making some more predictions, and we're looking ahead to USA and Russia. Let's get to it.
So, first game of the week that we had was on ESPN. Austin defends their home, 41-33 over Utah, and they happen to be undefeated in Round Rock.
Interesting.
So I guess Austin really isn't that bad. Really didn't see the growth I thought I would see from Utah this week. And, Kurt Morath, like his boot has been really a part of, this whole thing.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. They were really missing his kicking ability, even from hand. Just being able to play on the side of the field that they wanted to play on, or seemed to have wanted to play on the last few weeks. They just weren't able to do that without Kurt Morath's, cannon of a boot.
It did pick up a little when Ben Nichols came on the field, so maybe that's something they want to look at while Kurt Morath is out.
Johnny Linehan, when he was starting at BYU, was probably, the best fly half in the country. But he's been out of the game for a little bit. Played football, tried to punt in the NFL for a little while, So I think he's only really been in Utah's setup for like 3 weeks. So I don't think that decision to start him was really, I would say, smart. I think, if Johnny had been in camp the entire time like Ben Nichols had, he'd understand the game plan. And we've really seen the evolution of Utah. They're very like possession based, and they kick. And Kurt was, just kicking the ball deep and pinning it in the backs to give Utah possession inside their opponent's 22, and it worked, against like Houston, right? And it sort of worked against Seattle, except the difference was Seattle was good enough offensively to just use the little bit they had and score more points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, it seems like Houston's biggest, maybe not biggest issue, but their attack ends up being much more. I guess it's not really the one channel, but that 1-2 channel just off the ruck almost constantly. They go forward, 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 and then eventually they go out to the backs, and almost always ends up as a kick or trying to find Vithi as the danger man. And when you're playing it seems like the Utah game plan works really well against a team like that. That's kind of working for kind of, I don't know, maybe the Alabama style football if that holds here. The run down your throat until you're tired, and then try to take it over the top. It doesn't really work if you're playing from your own half the entire time. The teams like Seattle that have shown that they can play from any part of the field, obviously, then you can get away. They can get away with things like that. Austin showed that they could attack from any part of the field as well. It was really impressive. I mean, we hadn't seen that out of them yet.
Yeah, looking at Austin's attack, you're starting to see that growth of like the team get better together, and you're starting to be like, in the back of your mind, you're saying, hey, Alan Yarde, at least me, I looked at him and it's like, this guy is probably this is the most qualified coach in the league, period. Like straight up. So
got a great resume.
Yeah, great resume, right? So it's either going to work or it's not. Well, it's starting to work right now. If you look at the two game plans, because let's go back to the first Utah-Austin game, how many times did they key in on Henko, right? Mm-hmm. Henko really wasn't a factor on offense this week. Mm-hmm. He had some good carries, but, he
had a good assist or two as well. I mean, they had that really good break that led to no, is it Welsh, the number 9? Walsh, thank you. Yeah, his try was, that was almost purely set up. I mean, obviously, Walsh had his flair at the end of it, but that was mostly set up by the break by Honko there.
Yeah.
Was there any case for that try being called back for obstruction? Walsh's.
I haven't seen it that close. I'm not sure.
I'd need to rewatch that portion of the game, but I don't think so. I mean, especially with the way they've been calling, especially with how tight they've been calling games, without TMO in place, I don't really have the angle on that.
Yeah, but you gave me something good to go back and watch now on my rewatches through the week.
But so, the key in on Henko sort of pretty much shut him down for most of the match, but that seemed to open up everyone else.
Yeah, and they took advantage of it.
And then I liked that Suniola is still considered a threat because Zin Zan's second try was set up by Utah collapsing on Andrew and him offloading to Zin Zan for the try.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Zin Zan was great. 2 tries. You look at him. Is it me or just people getting used to getting hit hard? Because for the most part, you're not seeing a lot of, Feitu Vainicolo and Paul Lasike just running shot on people. I think guys are used to it now. We're at the point where speed and physicality in this season, guys aren't. I wouldn't say people were afraid to take on Paul Lasike, but I think people didn't know what they were going to get. Whereas, Zin Zan's throwing his body in there, and Zin Zan is significantly smaller than Big Paul is.
Yeah.
I think he knew how to tackle like that. I think a lot of guys are trying to tackle upper body, whereas with guys like Fetu Vanikolo and Paul Lasike, you kind of have to tackle them around their legs.
Yeah, it's really your only chance, especially with obviously the CK, but Vanikolo he's so shifty, he's so quick laterally that you really need to get into his hips. Otherwise, you're really not gonna stand much of a chance. It seems like.
For me, the bright spot of Utah was to not allow T. Like when he had the ball,
he's fun to watch. Yeah, Lauti is he's one of my favorite. Like for me, it was a breakout player because I had never really known who he was before this season. But as a break onto the scene type of player, in my opinion, considering I didn't know who he was, man,
dude. There was an interesting play. I think it was in the second half. He got caught on the sideline, but got out of the tackle and was able to gain like 20, 30 extra meters.
Lauti is an extremely evasive runner.
Mm-hmm.
His vision is very interesting, and Josh, you're talking about tackles that he can get out of. He gets out of a lot of tackles.
He's not terribly large, right?
No, he might be 6 foot, and he's not big. But I mean, on the wing,
like 5'8", 175 or something.
I need to look
around my size. I mean, he's not a terribly big guy.
I think he's a little bit bigger than that, but he's not, just a massive human being or anything. But
yeah, but even still, he's able, like you said, he's able to find that space in the tackle. He's able to create the space in close contact and force through even big guys trying to take him down. It's really, really fun to watch.
There was an interesting switch that Alf Daniels made that I'm kind of questioning. Putting Lote Tuipulotu at loose head, then relegating Alex Tucci to the bench.
I don't get it, to be honest. It was Lote didn't perform well at loose head when you watch that game. He was if I was going to say that Patty Ryan is back in form, I would use this tape because I think Patty Ryan won that battle every time, and it was not in Lote's favor throughout the game. And then there was a significant difference when Tucci did come on.
Yeah, they seemed to get much more stable. The scrums got much more stable when he got in. I would agree with that. But correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I remember Tuipulotu's name being bounced around when during pro. Is that? Am I misremembering?
No, you're remembering right.
Yeah.
He was.
Was he with San Diego at the time, or either that or Sacramento? I think it
was with Sacramento. Because I know he played with the Sacramento Blackhawks in club rugby. So I think he was just pulled into Sacramento, and as far as scrummages are concerned, that club program put a lot of dudes into pro, and they have a few guys that are scattered throughout MLR. I need to look at specific player bios, but they had a lot of front row guys going to pro. It was kind of interesting because I guess they have talking to one of the guys from NorCal. They have a lot of that club has a lot of Islanders on it, so it's very and they scrum, they churn out scrummagers. So Josh, do you have anything to round this one up before we move on to Saturday's matchup?
Just a nice performance by Timothy Guillemon. Nice kicking performance, especially as I guess they didn't do too well, but in the second half kind of pushed Austin over the hump at the end.
Yeah, for Guillemon, I think he really had to adjust to the wind, and that was something that Johnny wasn't able to adjust to really well at all. And, in the second half, he was – look at this. 1, 2. So of his kicks, he made he had 1 miss in the second half, whereas I think he had like 3 misses in the first half. And granted, they switched sides, but that win was still shitty. So, so moving on to Seattle, they went down to Houston, and it was a bit different. I thought this game was going to be pretty good. Some people didn't like it, and I look at that roster that they put out, and you're wondering, is Phil resting his guys? Because the team is basically player run at this point. Because Phil is the head coach. Is he resting his guys, or is he thinking different based on how he's scouted? Is he doing Gary Gold a solid by resting Khalifi in the first half? But why is Metcher on on the bench? But I look at Nick, if you think about this, do you look at your scrummagers like a unit, like offensive lines work in football, basically, to where usually if you're gonna put in backups, you would just change the whole thing, and that's sort of what I think happened, except they just started Barkwell, but you would use your props as a unit. You change them both out at the same time. That's what I think they wanted to do, because they knew that humidity was going to be the problem, right? And they wanted to provide lift, and they felt confident in, Shepard and Gordon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see the advantage of that, and I feel like I've seen that happen a time or two in watching, but in my opinion, a tight head. Not every tight head's a tight head, and loose head's a loose head. But once you know the techniques of that position, the specialized position to your left or right, as long as your hooker knows who he's working with, generally I think you can almost work as individuals as opposed to as a general unit. Though at the same time, I could see the benefits of doing a line change, so to speak, as you were saying. I don't know. I'm not the Grant Cole of the world, right? I'm not.
As a hooker, like you're, as long as you work with people, I don't think it matters. I think it's more about the stability of your locks and how those two, your tight head and loose head, really work together. How they work with you is very important, but you need to be able to match the push that they both give, right, on each side, so that you can drive straight and square and not receive penalties. Personally, I think that in the first half, scrummage wise, Houston was winning this battle. I think they won the battle overall. But there was a big difference when Khalifi started the second half, and then Mitchell came on for the last 30 for Seattle. I really wanted to see that battle be the start between Khalifi and Mullen.
So it would be Mullen,
because they're in camp together, right? They were at Eagles mini camp together the week, earlier in the week, and I really wanted to see that go right away. But they didn't need. They obviously showed that they wanted to have 2 fresh loose heads to go up against Mullen for 80 minutes. I think Mullen earned that distinction, or the honor of having 2 different people having to go against him from the get-go. It seemed to me, watching from the stands, that the loose head, whoever started at loose head, I can't remember who was starting. Skeeter for Houston and Barkwell for Seattle.
No, at loose head. At
loose head for Mike Shepard.
Shepard. Oh wow, that's a little surprising, because he's a name that's around a little bit.
Wait, no.
To me, that Mullen was.
I just fucked that one up. Killing Gordon.
Gordon. Okay. Even still, he's a big guy. He's not a bad loosehead at all. And I'm not saying I'm not saying his performance was necessarily bad, but it seemed to me that Mullen was just eating his lunch most of the day. It seemed multiple times I saw him losing his mind over and over again and just dropping. A couple scrums in a row from my side. Now, I mean, obviously, I'm seeing from the stand side, so opposite the camera. And unfortunately, the ref was often on the other side as well, so it wasn't always called. But, such is life in the scrum.
Well, you got a good player because the Eagles squad is now almost fully professional.
Yeah.
You got a good player that commands respect when he's called into the squad without having appeared in the season.
Yeah, that was pretty intense. Just gets called, and now he's good to go.
And he's made it through whatever whatever death camp they just went through. Obviously, we lost to was it David Tamilau and
Tony Lamborn.
Lamborn didn't make it through. So
I think we'll talk about that towards the end of the show.
Yeah, my fault.
But that was an interesting change, to be honest. Although I would have called up Matt Jensen over Greg Peterson. That's just
you took one out. You took one out from me. I was going to make that. I was going to make that during the last
fist pound.
Yeah, I was going back to the Utah game. I'm actually very surprised not to see Matt Jensen in camp, considering I think he's really upped his game with this with MLR. I mean, it seems like every carry he's making a meter, but he's making pretty nice, legitimate 5-meter runs multiple times, and still a force in the line out.
Yeah. So going back to the Seawolves and how their offense worked, they seemed to they played a lot of just quick ball. They cycled the ball back to their backs very efficiently. Went with a lot of what I've seen from Austin is like short offloads, just good support running. Mm-hmm. For me, Phil Mack's form in the last 3 matches is the best I've seen him since I started watching him like 3 or 4 years ago. And did he play this good when he was 25?
Hey man, quality's got quantity's got a quality all its own, right? Quantity of years, at least in this case.
Yeah.
There is one thing I noticed, and it's kind of a pattern throughout the league. The teams that have the hardest time generally are playing the flattest ball. And the teams that are having the most success are the ones that are running onto the pass. You could kind of see it with Glendale. Seattle did it, and Austin did it. Utah does it a little, but a lot of the times, like Houston was having troubles because they were playing flat ball and they weren't running onto the pass.
Yeah, I mean, so anyone who knows me, Dan probably said, like, if I thought of what team you rooted for, it was like he said it was Houston, right? And I've met a lot of these guys. I've talked to a lot of these guys on Houston, and we've got some really great individual players and great people. So I really root for them to just get after it. And I've been to one of Coach Fitzpatrick's practices. They run things at a pretty fast clip and very efficiently. So I really don't know what is going on, in what is going on leading up to the games, because these are great practices that you never see any of this stuff at the club level. But I watch these games and there seems to be a disconnect with how their game plan is. They're struggling, especially with how they're cycling the ball. Josh talked about how they're playing a lot of flat ball, but up front in the scrummage and the lineout, they've got the pieces to win. I think they've got the pieces in the back line, but there's just a mental break that is not working. In the preseason, VC got the ball a lot, and I think people are really starting to isolate Kalinis Sau and VC. And if you've looked at how Houston has played, they've been crashing a bit too much because they run basically the same offense that Austin does, but you can run the 1-3-2-2 differently. And I think Austin's running wide. They're trying to run wide and fast. I think that's the intent here, but we're just guys just aren't getting up, and maybe it's because I don't really know what the problem is, but the forwards and the backs, there's a disconnect in their game plan and how they're trying to execute.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. As you said, they're trying to run a similar system to Austin, but the like you said, there's a disconnect between the forwards and the backs. It seems that Houston likes to go pack ball almost all the way across the field at times. It very what do you call that? Conservative type of attack at times. And what I noticed during the game multiple times was they would continue that conservative attack, and Seattle would just leave half the field completely uncovered and follow the forwards. If they're going, say we're going left to right on the field, they would leave the entire left side completely uncovered because Houston wasn't going to use it. They were just going to continually march shorter and shorter, shorten the field as much as they could, working all the way across the field, and then eventually they'd go back the other way once the back's all set up over there, and then again they would do it. It almost seems like it seems to me, at least this is my opinion, but I'd love to hear yours on it. It almost seems like the Utah attack with Kurt Marath would be a similar, would be an advantageous attack plan for Houston. Play kickball with the other team for a little bit, try to win the kicking battle, the position battle for a little bit, and then use your. I mean, I think they were relatively stout on defense against a good attack in Seattle. If you can play good defense in the other team's half, force them to kick, then you set yourself up to have much better attacking position.
Yeah, I
worked really well with
Sam Windsor.
Sam Windsor, thank you. Sam Windsor's boot, you know.
Sam Windsor can put the ball anywhere, right? So I think that would be a significant adjustment if they play possession game and they just did what Utah was doing. I'm not saying do it the exact same way, but you just pin the other team back and force them to make mistakes because it was a defensive battle most of the game, right? So if you just pin them back, you play hard defense, and then you hit the gap when you're within the 22, you're going to have a shot, right? And here they didn't play the possession game, and, they committed too many penalties. Windsor is uncapped, for those that want to know. However, he's not qualified for the U.S. yet, but I think we have a long line. Sorry. But I think also I've seen Windsor coach. I think he's got a very bright future as a coach in the U.S. In like about 5 years. So, yeah, I think he's got about a year more to,
I think that's right.
Be a resident. And I've seen worse things happen, but if we get a bunch of injuries and he's qualified, he's probably, the informed fly half that is putting his hand up for selection that is in the U.S. right now. So, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Fan activation.
Houston does it really well. They're I've been to a couple places now, a couple of the stadiums down here now, and I think Houston does a really good job of their fan activation in person at the stadium. Obviously, and we'll get to that later, but their social media numbers kind of show that as well, I think. And they were giving out these lovely little light up thunder sticks. You slam them together, and the light comes on. It was really cool. They had sponsor giveaways beforehand with some new gym was opening up, and they came out to give away some good stuff. Had the players that weren't on the bench this week were out there to sign autographs, which I'm sure other teams do as well. And the Lady Cats are quite the show. They got out there and danced a little and threw T-shirts and led cheers. It was a good time. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
So. Yeah, I think Houston's done a great job. One thing I did notice, like they were loud this week. You guys were getting after it.
Hey,
I think the night game helped that a little.
I was just talking to someone earlier about another team here in the South, how warm it is and how much that's really affected the crowds itself, and specifically how allowing night games for those of us that have to deal with this 100-degree heat would be and is very beneficial. I think Houston had their best attendance of the year.
Yeah, Houston's had a pretty good linear growth so far, but this night game, for regular season attendance, this night game was a massive difference for them. And I think when you're going to play games in the South, in Houston, Austin, and New Orleans at this time of year, they gotta be night games. That's
it's a necessity. I mean, at this point, I've been to two of the New Orleans games I've been to have been those midday, just scorchers. Man, it is hot, and I think those days weren't even as warm as it is now. So, if it's possible, which I know New Orleans doesn't quite have their lights yet, but I believe they will next season. It's really going to open up possibilities for them to grow. I think that'll do well for the crowds.
I think they'll be getting lights in like August for when football season comes in or something like that, because they're playing home games. And I'm not playing day games in September in New Orleans. No.
Not in those pads, man.
No, thank you. But moving on to the final match of the weekend, Glendale came down to New Orleans, and they ripped the hearts out of that crowd. I'll tell you what.
Hey, the scoreline could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, there's a player I'll talk about that kept New Orleans in the game for all of the first half and really stopped it from being much worse. But for me, I'll probably send a note, to talk to Mark Bullock and Coach David Williams. But this is like, even though they scored 47 points, for me, the Raptors didn't look good. What do you think, Josh? This is your team.
Yeah. My question was, did Glendale cruise, or was NOLA that bad? I almost want to say Glendale was that bad, but they were just able to capitalize more on NOLA's mistakes. I don't know if the 2-week layoff with it. I mean, they kind of had handling issues against San Diego before they went on this 2-week bye, but it just seemed like the layoff didn't help. It almost made it worse.
Yeah, for me, I am of the opinion that so far in the season, the bye week has not been kind to teams, and they had 2 bye weeks. The difference was, they're undefeated, and I think they are, like, for the most part, the most talented team in the league. When you go top to bottom, I think, there's going to be a chance for a great final right now between Seattle and Glendale. But the difference is they have a full staff, and the core of this group has been together for so long. And, I'm looking at this team, right? So Sean Davies, how much has his game really changed? I don't remember him being an athletic player, like executing, quick carries around the ruck, being a crazy man, like tackling dudes that are twice his size, and, really getting in the open field. Sean Davies, I've always been a fan of his game because it's been like core scrum halving, right? Ball speed, ruck management, and then he's running all over the place. Like this is a different Sean Davies, and talking to a dude that's just getting older, and it's kind of crazy to watch.
I almost want to say he developed a fuck it attitude. I'm just gonna do what I want.
And maybe that's what happens when you become the captain. You gotta bring a little moxie to your game, and that's what's going on.
I almost wonder if the Uruguay match in the ARC, when he started that fight on the sideline, had a little to do with it.
Everyone's talking about, like, everyone wants to get mad about scrum halves, and like people are talking about Holden Younger. I'll say Holden Younger behaved himself this game, and like Sean Davies is a guy that would like Sean Davies will get you in trouble.
Yeah,
I'm like,
if I remember correctly, Holden tried stuff when NOLA came here, and Sean basically shut him down.
Oh, I wonder if it carried
Oh
over.
yeah, they got it. Those two like got into it. It was kind of funny. I was like, it's like when the two scrum halves get into it, it's like front rows are like, I'm just gonna go over here. You do what you want. Like those, but I mean, I don't know why people get worried about scrum halves. It's like in their job description to like cause fights on the pitch. I don't know why that is, but it's what they do.
Somebody's got to bring some heat to the fire, man.
But another player for me, and we'll talk about him later in the show because he was selected Player of the Week by Major League Rugby, is Will Magie. Like, people keep talking about how he's probably going to be behind Will Hooley, in the pecking order. But how much has his game improved, throughout this season?
I think a lot, because I think he finally realizes, or we now have enough talent at the 10 position that he can't cruise. I almost felt he was like on autopilot the past couple of years, but now that there's Ben Seema's there, Will Hooley's there, AJ McGinty, there's a boatload of talent at that position now that we didn't have before, and I feel like that kind of brought on this switch in mentality for him.
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily know if he's like feeling the heat per se, but I think he understands that he needs to perform. And I'm a big fan of Will, and he's a great dude. But I can't believe how much his game has gotten better, and it's sort of in concert with Sean's, game. So it's very interesting to see that happen, right? But it's gonna be a good summer for that guy.
Yeah, I honestly think it may even be partly the level of competition that is bringing it out of him almost. I mean, it's not like, from the only times I've seen him in the past year or so, year two or so, have been in pro and in any USA caps. But he's been consistently great this whole season and getting better. I think I have to agree. Honestly, I think it's the level of competition that's bringing it out of players. It's the needed competitive edge to continue to do this week in, week out.
And honestly, if it wasn't for Sam Windsor's just boot of a leg, I honestly think Will Magie would be up there in MVP consideration.
Yeah, I think Will's in the discussion, to be honest. I don't think he's not in the discussion. I think you've got I think you could say it's probably along the lines of if I was going to go like five guys, Vili Tolutau, Phil Mack, Sam Windsor, Honko, yep, and Will Magie. Those would be the five guys that I would put on my writers ballot that we'll have to do because we're running the writers poll. And to talk about NOLA, the guy who was the standout for me, I thought Hubert Biden's was able to compete very well against Kalepi Fafita, which allowed the NOLA scrum to be stable throughout this thing, and they didn't really get to beat for the most part. But the guy who was the standout for me is Matt Houston. His defensive work rate was pretty ridiculous. And you see him, the way he plays all the time. He's the best way I can explain it is if you look at a women's eagle that is one of my favorite players is Christiane File. She plays like a maniac all the time because she's very undersized as a flanker. And that's the game I see from Matt Houston. he just plays, sort of out of body, and you find him around rucks, you find him around every tackle, and so.
I put Joey Stock as my NOLA man of the match, but now that I got a day to think about it, I probably should have given it to Cam Troxler. I mean, he had a hell of a match. It's nice to see somebody stand out in the kind of throwaway game for NOLA.
Yeah, Cam Troxler, definitely a good guy that, I haven't seen him play a lot. And then, all of a sudden, he's starting at fullback and he does a really good job offensively. And then, when they were able to put pressure by kicking the ball down the field. So.
And obviously, Merrick, you just graduated from LSU, maybe 2 months ago? Not even a month ago.
I don't think he graduated. I think he finished classes. Because did they have graduation like in April or like?
It was I just 2 weeks ago actually was the commencement and all that. So nice. I'm getting shorter and shorter and shorter time span here.
But so I
guess I have one more question to ask. Kind of.
Okay.
What is going on in NOLA? Because they've almost done the reverse of Austin, whereas Austin kind of started slow and has gotten hot. NOLA started hot and then has kind of faded to the background.
It's the rugby gods, man. They have not been kind. They, injuries have just been really bad for them. Zach Striffler, I think, is out for the rest of the season. Amro Guda is out for a couple of weeks. I'm not sure if he's out for the rest of the season. He might be. So they lost their backup hooker because Cam Falcon. And Howard is away with Canada now, and then Cam Falcon has been, rotating in as the starter at tight head prop between him and Ben Tarr. They've split about half the time, and so he's now forced to play hooker full time because yes, Alex Janoka was on the roster, but he wasn't seeing a lot of time behind Eric Howard and Amro Guda. And if you guys paid attention, a Rooney player, Anthony Perry is looks like he's been loaned out to fill in the void for injuries down in NOLA.
Right
so he was war number 18 on Saturday. So
I guess that kind of leads into a completely separate question from this game. We see Rooney as being confirmed and having their players loaned out. If DC doesn't join next year, as we're assuming they're either joining 2019 or 2020, do they become the quote-unquote farm team?
I think if they don't join right away in 2019 because they left it open when they released their season ticket, deposit.
Mm-hmm.
If they actually execute the same model, which they said they were going to do originally, right? Is they said that they were going to field a team in an exhibition season that would play against top clubs and some MLR teams in preseason fixtures, so that they can start building for depth. If they do that, then I would see those contracted players get loaned out when injuries strike, because I keep trying to do the math on where all the players are going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the squads, if you say most of the squads are 35 guys, let's say max 35, although Utah has more than 35 guys that they've suited up. So if you look at it I know where the Rooney players are coming from. So you take the loans back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got 5 guys to add to old rosters.
Mm-hmm.
But
at some point, it look a little bit like a Ponzi scheme. Where do you?
Where are you gonna? I'm really struggling. Where, unless a lot of college kids come in, and some guys move.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder I wonder where the other 70 players are going to come from, because I know that Rooney has their squad. I know that New York has their squad. I don't know if it's going to be Dallas. I don't know where their players are coming from. I mean, yes, there are the Reds and the Colts, or the Quins, and there's a decent rugby scene that plays D1 up in Dallas, but
they could probably Shreveport as well. But I mean, it's even still, that's one large city.
Yeah,
and
you're gonna have players come from elsewhere. But I'm trying to think, like, how many players that are at this level do we have? Because we've seen the standard in Division I club rugby just drop over the past 5 years, right? Like this year, shout out to Liam, but Mystic only won 5 games, and 3 of those were in the playoffs this year. So where are the 70 players of this standard going to come from is my concern. And, we've seen they're talking about raising the international player limit to 8 to deal with this. But that still, leaves you with 56 players you have to find.
Mm-hmm.
So
it almost begs the question where if it's worth staying at 10 domestic teams or 12 domestic teams a little longer before growing. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, I think you have to go to non-areas that have teams. So Dallas kind of will definitely be the last team, and it should be the last team in Texas. I think DC will be fine because they can draw from the tri-state area of Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. I think they'll be fine. Northern California, a central team, so Chicago was likely. Kansas City has interest. One or maybe both of those could work. And then I think something in the Deep South. I know Atlanta had mentioned, so maybe that's as far as you go until we get the level of rugby high enough in this country.
I think the level of most of these teams is going to raise. So where are the players going to come from so that you don't dilute the process? Say it's not Dallas, because I think it is. And you're trying to find 2, and then that the pairing of Ontario and Vancouver is no longer at play, and you can have either or. And we're going to just have 10. Well, one Canadian team, you're going to find the players. I think if you added 2 Canadian teams, you're going to find the players more than you're going to find, 70 Americans, right?
Now I think Ontario has kind of proven that they would fit in just fine as they are. And maybe even find a couple more talented players around Canada if they need to fill in.
Yeah, well, I think that say it's not Dallas and say it's Ontario and say it's DC. That now leads you to only have to find, those 30 players. And there are high-performance squads that, are on the East Coast. You have the USA South Panthers and you have the Capital Selects. You split the team between those 2, and then you get some guys from the tri-state area to come down, then it starts to look more manageable. But it's really about guys being able to find jobs, like 20 of these dudes being able to find day jobs, right? That they can deal with for the next couple of years. So I think for me that's a big issue that needs to be evaluated carefully.
If say it's Ontario, just Ontario out of Canada, do they become Canada A? Do they become like the Irish and Welsh teams in the Pro 14? Where it's just development purely for the Canadian national team?
I mean, some of those guys will get selected, period. Right? Like some of those guys will. But they still have a good amount of overseas-based players. But the rest of, this is how it gets dumb for Canada. They have an overseas training group, so all the guys that play professionally overseas, and then you have your players that are playing in the MLR, and then the rest of them, they have a centralized training group, which Rugby Canada, in the middle of the BC Premier League season, banned their centralized training group players from playing with their clubs in the BC Premier League.
Huh.
So there's all sorts of weird stuff going on up there. But what is one of the things that you want to wrap this one up with, Nick?
I'm happy to see JP Elof back off of his supposed sickness or whatever it was ailing him. Very happy to see him back on the field. I really like that Elof Howden 10-12 pairing. I know some people have had issues with Howden's defense, but I think he's a very creative 12, and put him with a I don't know. They don't necessarily have a Rasalika or a Lasike type center, but if they did, I think that would go really well with a Howden at 12, and be quite fun to watch if they had a little bit more, depth at centers. Unfortunately, they have what they have, and happy to see Cam Troxel get the start, and I'm glad Josh said that he did well. Unfortunately, I didn't see the game, so I won't know that until, I don't know, later tonight or tomorrow when I get around to watching the game.
So moving on, look at player accolades from Major League Rugby. Major League Rugby named William Magie as Player of the Week. His performance was really good. I wrote up the write-up on that selection, so I can't really it's like, he got it, right? And then the play of the week was the Faison Donahoe intercept try. Any comments on that?
Seemed to just set the tone for that game, didn't it? It's Utah liked to try to go too wide and go wide quickly, and Austin wasn't going to have it, it seemed.
I don't know. I thought Will McGee's could have been put up there too.
And game of the week, what did you guys have? I said Austin, Utah, because of really what it signifies. We really saw them both grow last week. I figured that Utah was going to continue their growth, but we really see, Austin at home, and then they did everything they needed to make the jump, and how this sets them up for this game against a very hot Seawolves on Friday night.
Yeah, I was going to put Houston versus Seattle because I really enjoyed the defensive battle that it was, and the scrums were fun to watch as well. But I decided on Austin, Utah for a similar reason. It's a big step forward for Austin, getting that much closer to clinching a playoff berth, and they seem to be building some real continuity with their team and looking to challenge, maybe hopefully a little bit in the playoffs.
I thought I chose Austin, Utah as well. While Seattle and Houston was a good game, both of the other games outside of Austin, Houston were kind of to me.
Hey guys, I'll jump in too and share my thoughts, because I'm a big softie when it comes to this sort of stuff, and I love rugby, but I also love family time, and I got to take the laptop over and actually show my folks their very first rugby match. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Trying to talk them through, make comparisons to football and stuff they understand, and so I really enjoyed the Glendale NOLA game for that reason. Just because it was a nice Sunday afternoon. It was time when they were available and didn't have a bunch of grandkids running around. So
yeah, I was doing the same thing with my brother's new girlfriend at the game, just talking her through the basics.
Stealing your brother's girlfriend.
Oh, no, nothing like that.
So let's look back at our Week 7 predictions. Utah at Austin. The margin ended up being 8 points. I had Utah by 5. Josh.
Sorry. Got to make sure I unmute my mic. I had Utah by 10.
And then Victor had Utah by 7, and
someone
was close.
Yeah. I had Austin by 7.
That was a great call. The Saturday's game, Seattle at SaberCats, 20-7. I had Seattle -7.
I had Seattle -3.
Victor had Seattle -10, so good for him.
And I had Seattle -14.
So you win that one, Corey. And the final game of the weekend, wow. We were way off. Glendale at New Orleans, 47-10. I had Glendale -3. I thought the humidity in the bye week was just going to give him a kick in the schnoz, but it did not. Josh.
I had Glendale -5. I thought the Seattle game might have been a wake-up call, but obviously not.
And then Victor had Glendale -10. Congrats to him.
And I was the furthest away on this one. I actually had NOLA winning by 3. So I thought maybe some home field magic was going to take place. It did not.
So this week we have on Friday Seattle returning to Humidity on Friday at Round Rock playing Austin Elite. I'm going Seattle -2.
I'm going Austin to continue their undefeated home streak. I got Austin by 3.
Yeah, Austin's got that home field advantage, it seems, but I can't overlook Seattle's attack is just incredible. I think they're going to win by 7 or so.
And I'm putting Seattle up by 14 on this one just because they're handling themselves and they got their eyes on the prize at the end of the season here. I don't think they're going to stumble now.
Then on Saturday, we have the SaberCats traveling to Glendale.
That's also on Friday.
That's also on Friday?
Same time.
Same time on Friday, and then San Diego NOLA's on Saturday.
Huh.
What?
Yeah.
That
And what
freaked
day?
me. That freaked me out. I
And
didn't know
USA
that.
Russia's on Saturday too. Is that right?
Yes, that is. It's
Friday,
about.
Saturday, Saturday. That won't be terrible.
I think it's about an hour after the Glendale game. Both games are on Friday?
That's
Yep.
weird.
9 p.m. Eastern.
Because that's why I'm not leaving on Friday for my vacation. 'Cause we were originally going to leave on Friday, but the game's on Friday, so I'm going to the game, taking my pictures, and then we're leaving 3 a.m. the next morning.
Jesus.
That's dedication right there.
All right, so I got that one way off. That means I have to do more work. That's gonna be tough. How do you watch 2 games at the same time? So I've got Glendale -5 because they lose 6 guys, right?
Yeah.
So, and you lose your fly half and your scrum half. I think that's going to have significant impact.
I got Glendale -7. See who they get to replace Will McGee. I think Maximo Deacheval can do the kicking, but it's interesting to see who they place at 10.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. Mika Cruz was a fly half in high school. So he's been playing a lot. I wonder if they'll use him at fly half. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's that's kind of what led to me picking how I did. I'm a little torn on this one because I can't see Houston going to the altitude and doing terribly well, but their defense can be disruptive, and especially with a new 9-10 connection, I can see that having some effect on Glendale and in the scrums, considering they're going to be losing Ben Landry and Dylan Fawcett. Anyone else? I don't think they're losing any prop.
They lose most of their spine. So you got Fawcett out, you got Davies out, you got
Quill.
Quill's out too. I didn't know Quill got called in, or don't remember.
No, Quill got called in. No,
Was he not? No. So
no, he's not. He's there.
He has in the past, but
He hasn't been called into this camp. So
It's Fawcett, Landry, Davies, McGee,
and somebody
and
else.
who else?
in center.
Oh, Bryce Campbell.
Bryce Campbell.
So
Right.
who else? That's 5.
That's it. I think it's 5. But someone kept saying 6, and I don't know who it is. I have the list. It's not. It's
Just
not. It's not Quill. I know that. Although Quill would have been a good addition.
That wouldn't be bad with Langdon out.
So to the squad. So, Corey, who do you have?
Well, I took a bunch of shrooms before writing this out, so I went ahead and said that Glendale was going to win by 30 because, I just think SaberCats are plummeting fast and hard right now.
And our final match of the weekend, which is on Saturday, San Diego at New Orleans. When I thought San Diego was going to rise, they played like crap in the humidity, and this game is not at a good time. So I'm going New Orleans, even with all their injuries, -1.
I'm sticking with San Diego. I think they figured it out. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with their losses since they're losing the most. They're losing 7 guys. So, but I still got San Diego -5.
Yeah, I picked NOLA -3 here, mainly because of the heat. I just pulled it up really quickly. It will be 91 degrees and a little bit shady, so maybe they'll have a little break. But losing 7 guys and coming into this swampy,
shady. That doesn't mean good, man. That means it's going to hold everything. It means it's like putting a cap on everything, so you're just going to feel it. It's going to be nasty.
And I'm going to go with NOLA by 5. I think it'll be close, but I don't think it's going to be – I think they'll win it. I really do.
Going into transactions this week, San Diego added Life West scrum half and Eagles camp player from the ARC, Devereaux Ferris. They added Brock Davies, who played football at Colorado State Pueblo, but he's an Australian-New Zealand mix. I think his mother is Australian, father is a Kiwi. He played Union and League previously before coming to the States. And then Sam Perry, who was a high school All-American and went to U of A and was playing at San Francisco Golden Gate. NOLA adds Anthony Perry from Rugby United New York on loan. And I think that was it for additions this week. So going into
all I was going to say is and then we also got we've got a national match coming up. Sorry, I was just trying to help you out there.
Oh, he was giving me a throw.
Yeah,
what a dick. So let's look at Eagles versus Russia. I'm not going to lie about this. I look at this purely as a warm-up for Scotland. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that seems about right. I mean, we crushed them. I wouldn't say crush them, but we shut them out last time we played them. So, and they're in World Cup qualifying by pure circumstance.
Yeah. I mean, in 7 meetings, we're undefeated. And in 2016, as you mentioned, we beat them, pretty handily, 25-0. And that was like, we just had the beginnings of, a professional atmosphere with Pro.
Right.
And
early Mitchell, I think.
Yeah, very, very early Mitchell. This was his 6th game, I think.
Yeah.
And then, we're better now.
Oh, yeah.
We're way better. And I think the margin needs to be greater. And, watching Russia in the rec, it didn't really do that good. But you have to look at them, sort of in a vacuum to really evaluate this is that, they have professional rugby teams in Russia that compete in, the Challenge Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all their whole team is, I think their entire team is professional. So they're all in daily training environments. So you can't really take them lightly. Yet I want to put 50 on these dudes.
Yeah, it would be quite the upset if Russia was able to, throw everything and the kitchen sink at us and somehow come out with a win. But honestly, I've seen so much improvement through the Eagles team over the last 2 years that I expect 30-plus margin for the Eagles.
That sounds about right.
And the 7 weeks of Major League Rugby has done, I think, that effect this year is going to pay dividends a lot earlier than I thought it would. I kept being cautious, and I said, it's really not about 2018.
Yeah, right.
It's about what we look like after the 2019 season, and with how the Eagle pool players have performed in Major League Rugby, I think we're going to see just a significantly better team than we even saw during the ARC.
Yeah, sure hope so. I mean, Dave Hodges has been the constant in that management group, and he seems to be having plenty of success throughout the ARC, and now with Gary Gold, hopefully having his hand being seen in the effects. Hopefully they're positive.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this match. I think it's going to be kind of like what Aaron said. It's going to be a good warm-up. Hopefully it's just going to be fun. It'll be fun to see the guys gelling and seeing what this time in the pro circuit has meant for that camaraderie. And, so I've got nothing but good things to look forward to. Can somebody remind me, how can we view this game? Is this one that's going to be on Flow, or?
I'm pretty sure this is on Flow. And, I think it's all TRC is supposed to exist till the end of the month. But everything I understand about the Rugby Channel is that thing is just, they're shooting bullets in a dead body right now.
I was able to watch some of the Wales South Africa match on TRC.
So, yeah, I think it's simulcast on Flow and TRC until the end of the month, and then the nail in Rugby Channel's coffin gets finally hammered. And,
I have neither of them.
So, yeah. But I did find out something for next week.
Ooh.
USA Scotland is on CBS for those that aren't going to the game. So on CBS Sports Network,
you got to clarify that.
On CBS Sports Network, there is an MLR game at 4. Yeah, at 4. And then at 6, this is Eastern times, at 6 Eastern, there is an AFL game. And then at 9 Eastern is when USA Scotland game is. I screenshotted it. So I screenshotted the schedule. Okay? I have the evidence.
Confirmed.
Corey.
Yeah.
We had some interesting tweets this week.
Oh, boy, did we. Yeah, so I'm going to, with Victor taking the week off and Dan taking a few weeks off, I'm going to fill in with Tweet of the Week this week. So, we had, there was a little bit of drama. Always like to keep my box of popcorn close to me whenever I hop on the tweeters. It's a lot of fun out there. So, ESPN sports writer who covers football and golf, Kevin Van Valkenburg, had tweeted out, "I briefly watched college rugby today while getting a haircut because they wouldn't turn on golf. Conclusion: if you gave me a year, Urban Meyer, Zeke Elliott, J.J. Watt, and Leonard Fournette, and an NFL practice squad, the U.S. would so thoroughly dominate rugby, other countries would quit."
I think, he had a point until he said Urban Meyer.
So that's what it started out as. He tweeted that. It got picked up by a couple of the rugby news sites and a couple of the influencers out there, retweeted a few times, and next thing he knows, he's got himself his inbox was filled up, let's put it that way. So
he didn't get ratioed, did he?
Say what?
He didn't get ratioed, did he?
I couldn't tell you.
Comments, then retweets and likes.
Oh, I'd have to look back to see. I know he was approaching 500 comments or replies by the time I checked tonight, so it's still going. My favorite, though, came from Martin Pengelly, friend of the show, and Martin said in response, Briefly watched The Empire Strikes Back because they wouldn't turn on With Nail and I. Conclusion: if you gave me a year, Darth Vader, Captain Phasma, some of those Red Imperial Guard dudes, and a second-hand at Walker, the Empire would so dominate Hoth, all the rebels would quit. So he kind of took the format and ran with it in just a delightful way. And yeah, good job, Martin. I really, really appreciate that one.
I really would have loved to see like 10 U.S. rugby fans take that and just run with a couple different versions of it. I like the Star Wars version, but I mean, you could see it, a bunch of different ways. I love it.
I did offer to hook him up with, I would use my influence with the director of media for USA Rugby, Calder Cahill. Shout out, bro. Thanks for getting the press kit out. And Alina Tabani, the other person that works in the media office now, for getting the press kit out 2 weeks in advance. Like, I think everyone else that used to, apply for credentials probably just didn't get them. They just didn't show up. Whereas, 2 weeks out, USA Rugby has been on top with the new media folks. So shout out to them for facilitating everything. But on to the next segment. Nick, this is why you were brought onto the show.
The whole reason. All right, I'm going to try a screen share here and see if I don't just blow up this whole stream. But we'll see what happens here.
Drum roll, please.
How's it look? Oh, there we go. All right.
I don't.
Yeah, we're not seeing it.
Oh no.
Shit.
Okay. Never mind. Oh, maybe. Hold on.
Hey,
there it is.
Look. You got all the behind the scenes there. All right, so we can. The whole reason I was brought on is to share just how things have been growing throughout, since the beginning. Really, I started tracking social media numbers mainly on Facebook since the time that the league was announced in around March 2017, right about the time that Corey started the RML Rugby Reddit. And we didn't have much at the time. I think we knew about Glendale. We knew about Houston, kind of, but they didn't really have any social media to speak of. There wasn't even a Facebook page or Twitter page for Major League Rugby at the time. But we've really grown over the last year, and still growing over this last month. As we can see, Houston, if we see right here on the left side, the Facebook numbers outmatch all the other social platforms. Houston sits around 25,000. Major League Rugby's right behind them. Glendale, Seattle, Utah, and then New Orleans, Austin, San Diego, all kind of sit together around the 3,000, 6,000 mark, I believe. As for Twitter, numbers stay a little lower. The league itself outmatches everybody, but everyone else stays around the 4,000 to 2,000 mark. And Instagram, it really is the second largest platform that we have so far for followers. Houston and the league follow each other pretty well so far. Utah actually has their best following on Instagram, as well as Seattle has continued to grow in that area. New Orleans, Austin, and San Diego and Glendale all follow each other there too. And I'll talk about trends with that. Actually, I can talk about that now since I just went through all three of them. As you can kind of see through the early trends, Houston took a really big jump early on when they had their first exhibition games. That's right about the December, January mark right here, where they really jumped from, around the 10,000 followers mark on Facebook to into almost the 20,000 range. And Major League Rugby really didn't have that big beneficial jump until the league started. The same could be said for Seattle. They've had a very good, consistent growth, but they really got a good bump from the league itself starting. What I'm kind of surprised to to see or not see really is any increases in these trends due to what I expected to see more of a expected to see more of an increased trend due to TV numbers. Obviously, before April 21st, when the league started, when the season started, we didn't have any TV to speak of for Major League Rugby or those extra. All we had were social media platforms as far as marketing went. It's really interesting to me to see that the league itself has increased the trend. The SaberCats, the Glendale's kind of bumped up a little bit. Seattle's taken a good bump, but most of them have kind of stayed fairly steady for their growth. Let's see. So for the last month, I generally, as some of y'all have seen on Reddit, I generally share these numbers at the beginning of every month to speak to the growth over the past month. Over the past month, Seattle has continued their growth in Facebook and Instagram and Twitter numbers greater than everyone else, to the tune of about 1,000, where everyone else is staying around the 200s, 300s growth. And our very own RML Rugby has grown pretty substantially over the last 2 months. We got 200 extra followers, 225 new followers on RML Rugby over the last month. So good job, Corey, and good job, EOD. Y'all are doing great. And I didn't include this on my post earlier today, but my favorite game to play month to month now is how many followers did Pro lose over the last month. So it's a little bit of Schadenfreude on my part, but from the time when the league started, they dropped about 200 followers. Over this last month, they dropped another 100. So it's always a fun game to play. I also went ahead and wanted to share the attendance numbers that we have up to date. These aren't most of these aren't accurate, but a good number of them are, as far as what numbers have been shared with us as far as attendance goes. As we can see, Seattle leads the league in attendance, obviously, selling out their stadium over and over again. And I mean, they're averaging close to 110% of their normal stadium capacity. I think Starfire holds 3,500. Is that correct?
Yep,
Aaron?
that's correct.
Yeah, and they're averaging about 10% higher than that number to really lead the league wonderfully. Gosh, their home field advantage is insane. Utah's pretty close behind them, though, numbers wise. Their last game had 4,000 people, almost 4,100 people at the game, and they still have 2 games left to go, 2 home games left to be played there at is it Zions Bank Stadium, I believe it's called. Yeah, so they I could see them. I could actually see them taking over the average attendance number. That said, we are still waiting for Seattle to come through with their official numbers for the last 2 games. So it could be interesting to see who leads the league in average attendance at the end of the season. It will be interesting to see. The other teams are still very good. San Diego and Glendale are both complete guesses on my part. From watching the videos of their previous 2 games or previous 2 home games, and just trying my best to estimate based on the size of their stadiums, I can kind of guess that they're pulling around 2,200, 2,250. They're right around the same, it seems, but I'm not sure. I really wish we could get some real numbers from those guys. Let's see here. Houston are all full numbers. As we said, they've been on a pretty good linear trend, increasing about 100 fans per match. But once they got a night game, that really jumped up. What is that? Another 800 people at that game. I can tell you from being there, it felt great. I mean, it was that whole side of the stadium we were on. I just saw a picture of it, I think on Twitter yesterday. That entire stadium. that entire side of the stadium was full, and it sounded great. It looked great. It felt good to be in that environment. But that's only 2,300 people. So relative to the other teams, it doesn't sound like a lot. But I mean, when your stadium holds 3,000 on one side, that's what you can ask for, right? Austin numbers again. The 700 number for their first game is accurate. The other two are, again, based off my estimations, so we can kind of say that they're around 1,300 average per game. And New Orleans is directly from a friend of mine that works for the Gold. They're averaging about 1,200, which is, I think that's respectable. I believe pro averaged 1,700. I think someone said before today. So to average 1,200 for the lowest is, in my opinion, pretty dang good. And so we'll return. That is all I have to share, I believe, guys. So, Mr. Aaron, back to you.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Nick. Now on to our final segment. And this is more of an op-ed. I'll get to the op-ed after these other two things. So H.R. McMaster had his first interview since leaving the Office of National Security Director and advisor to President Trump. And it was all about rugby. And that was written by a friend of the show, Martin Pengelly, who works as the managing editor of Guardian US Weekend. So that was cool to read, and all about the Warrior ethos and, military rugby. Really awesome stuff. And then DC MLR franchise is taking name suggestions. So if you just go onto Twitter and go at DC_MLR, you can give them your suggestions. The boys on Reddit, you guys got after it and gave some serious and funny, stuff to give them. And they were very happy about that. So they took those in. And then for the final thing is, I wrote a news article last week when the story hit that Will Chang, chairman of USA Rugby, and Rob King, vice chairman of USA Rugby, resigned. Their resignations came under pressure. Rob King's term was up, so he was going to be replaced in August. I think it was July or August, depending on when the semi-annual Congress meeting was. And, well, he's now straight up getting replaced because he's out. Will Chang had said he was going to retire. His term was not up until next year. He has been forced to resign. He was facing a recall vote that would have been executed tonight, as I understand, as part of an emergency Congress meeting from the USA Rugby Congress. And, people talk about him wanting to avoid conflict. Well, this is the guy who was the architect of RIM. They talk about how the model is based off of, Soccer United marketing. Everything that RIM did, he's responsible for, because he designed the business model with Brian McClanahan and Chad Keck after Nigel said, let's do this. And they ended up, coming up with some harebrained ideas that made no sense, like the Rugby Channel, which has lost them and their investors a lot of money. The RIM decided to, whether it was like throw all their eggs in a basket, but promote a test where they had to pay a lot of money to the Welsh Rugby Union and the South African Rugby Union that went down in RFK Stadium this weekend. And, you talk to different people. Some people had a good time. I know a lot of people had a bad time. I've saw multiple pictures of $150 seats that were broken in RFK. They didn't, stadium seats, right? They're hard backed. You sit in them and they fold down. Well, there weren't seats in this thing. RFK Stadium is slated to be demolished. And so, RIM went and promoted this test in Little South Africa, or I guess Little Johannesburg and Little Cardiff there is no Little Cardiff in any major city in the U.S. In fact, one of the few Welsh towns I know of is Bryn Mawr in New Jersey, across the river from Philadelphia. And then you have a bunch of people in Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia coal mining towns. But there really isn't a concentration of Welsh Americans in this country. The South African concentration is San Diego, Houston, and in Florida. So you had a bunch of people a lot of people went to this match. They're saying like 20,000 went. But I looked at all the photos. If you look at all the photos and say it's a 47,000 seat stadium, I'd say 15,000 went. But if we had this, say the DC United's like new facility was ready, if we had this in that stadium on the same day as the CRC, and you told me we had 2 major rugby events, within 3-hour drive of each other, and we were able to put 15,000 in a stadium, I would have called that a success. But we paid those 2 unions way too much money when we had zero money in the bank. RIM had no money in the bank when they in February, and then they started about reducing this. All these decisions are part of why the union is going to be bailed out by World Rugby. And, that's just something to let you guys know about. If you're a dues paying member of USA Rugby and you're paid up, and even if you're not paid up and you are hanging and you know a club president, talk to them, see what's going on, see if they know what's going on. If you are a full member of USA Rugby and you're ready to go, look up and see who your rugby congressperson is and talk to them, because not all of these congresspersons are forthcoming with information, and you have to pressure them, which is really poor. Whereas I know there's at least 5 or 6 of these dudes that have been fighting the fight for a very long time that are very transparent. They tell you what's going on. And that's how I know, that there's a World Rugby bailout. And it's like the debt clock that just keeps on ticking, because we lost a bunch of money here, with RIM in Washington, D.C. And there was an article in the Sports Mail that said World Rugby is looking to, recruit this after San Francisco, but I don't know how. We're so behind on the sponsorship game. It's going to look fine, because we outsold Moscow, in the first 3 weeks of ticket sales last summer. So there's going to be butts and seats. But when it comes to actually making revenue, which is all based off of sponsorships for the small World Cup, because the big World Cup is like a 2.5-month event total, right? So you have plenty of opportunities to make money just on ticket sales and concessions. But on the little World Cup, I don't know when World Rugby is making their money back. Just telling you that.
It also doesn't help that they're using the stupid format.
Oh yeah, the knockout format.
I like the knockout format.
I can maybe understand using it for the World Cup, but when Brett Gosper has come out and said we're seriously considering this for the 7 series, that's when I'm like, no.
I mean, that just doesn't work. I don't know. 7s for me, my philosophy on 7s is completely different than most people. But as the World Series thing is concerned, if you have issues and you want to have the women's event at the same venue at the same time, just make it a 3-day tournament like Vegas is and like Hong Kong is. Don't make it a 2-day tournament. Just make it a 3-day tournament. Who cares? The teams are already there. The teams roll into town depending on how back-to-back the series stops are. They roll into town on Monday. They're there. So adding another day at the event is really a non-issue, because I've been at a 7s tournaments, for HSBC or the like, and there is a lot of wasted time. So if you're wondering about how you're going to fit, teams in between, well, that's not hard. You just alternate back and forth, and the team that is going to come onto the pitch like the next, I've helped manage one of these things like as a liaison, and you can move very fast. You can get rid of the dead time. So I thought that was when I read that, I thought that was kind of dumb. So well, final thoughts, everyone. What do you guys got?
I got nothing.
All right.
Go Eagles.
Hey, Nick, tell us where folks can find you.
Folks can find me on Facebook. My name's Nick Henry. You can find me on Twitter at AggieRugger2010, and on Reddit at AggieRugger2010.
So,
well, thank you so much again for being here. It's been a real pleasure, and that's a lot of wonderful information that you were able to share with us and with our listeners. So thank you.
Hey, I hope it sheds some light on how things are growing.
All right, Aaron, you got anything for us on the way out, my friend?
No. Just check out the discussion on the Reddit board, and hit us up on Twitter if you've got anything burning in the palm of your hand and you want us to like chase down a rumor, and we're pretty good at verifying things. So
yeah, and to that end, we're very accessible as well. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, all at Earful of Dirt. You can also email earfulofdirt@gmail.com or visit our website, earfulofdirt.com. You can find our podcast. Our weekly podcast comes out every Wednesday night, or every Wednesday morning, rather. Sorry about that. It was Wednesday night last week because of the holiday. Every Wednesday morning, it's ready for your commute, and it is available on iTunes, Acast, Google Play, Stitcher, Player FM, just about every single thing we can find out there. It's available, and you can get us on your smart speaker at home. So just say, "Hey Google," or "Excuse me, Alexa, play us that latest episode of Earful of Dirt," and that'll happen for you. So finally, be sure to give us a call, share a voicemail, and we may share it on our show live. That number is 1-720-600-2679. That's 1-720-600-2679. That's a U.S. domestic call. And we are live every Monday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 p.m. where I'm at here in the middle of the country. Yeah. Be sure to join us next week. It's always a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun having Nick with us this week. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Corey. That was Aaron. We got Josh. Thanks, Nick. Oh, and lest we forget, happy anniversary to our co-host, Victor, who is celebrating his 5th anniversary with his wife. So congratulations to him. It's a good excuse not to be on the show tonight. So congratulations, man. And Aaron, you're not married, so no anniversaries for you. Okay, I'm going to shut up. Have a great week, everybody.